So before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional, ancestral, unceded territories of the First Nations and Native American peoples. So here where we are in Vancouver, we're on the land of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. But I know where many of you are, you're on the land of other nations. And please feel free to write those nations' names in the chat. Always, but especially during these difficult days, especially just after Canada Day, let's remember our connection to our sisters and brothers in these nations and pray for the day in which we might be with them in right relationship. So welcome this morning, everyone. Welcome to Living Interfaith. Know that the whole of you is welcome. You're not asked to leave who you are in your own homes. Please bring who you are in with you. But what you are asked to remember is that everyone around you has brought who they are in with them as well. And all of goodwill are welcome. When you're ready, let's start out with a song. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bruce and Cheryl. I have a few announcements. The first one is that there's going to be a free concert in person here in Surrey next Saturday, July 9th. It'll be at 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It'll feature Jeff Marcial and some other friends of ours from the Latter-day Saints community. So everyone's welcome to join. It's a free concert. They'll be playing contemporary Christian songs as well as some pop songs, some hymns, and original songs. And please feel free to reach out to me if you'd like the address. It was in the MailChimp email, but I can also send it to you if you're interested. It should be lots of fun. All my announcements are taking place on Saturdays for some reason. The next Saturday, July 16th, Dr. Thomas Ord, he's a professor at Northwind Theological Seminary, and he's going to be offering an in-person workshop here in Vancouver. It'll be at the Canadian Memorial Center for Peace from 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And it's on the topic of an open and relational God in a world of love and suffering. And if you're interested, I can send you the registration page, and it has more information here. Let me quickly just put that in the chat. So this is Thomas Ord on July 16th. Cool. And then yet another Saturday, the following Saturday, author Douglas Christie is going to offer a Zoom workshop. So this will work for folks all over, not just those local people. That'll be Saturday, July 23rd from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It'll be on contemplative ecology in a time of loss. So we'll be examining how we can cultivate a sense of wholeness and integrity when the world we inhabit is radically impacted by climate crisis. So it should be a really profound talk and interactive workshop. So, and if you're interested in that, I'll put that, the registration page there in the chat. Let's see. And then finally, so my friend Wilda is here with us today, and she's currently part of the Soul Guiding Program at Pacific Jubilee. And she's looking to connect with some folks from our community and others so she can learn more from those who belong to other faith traditions. She herself is Christian, but she's looking to make friends with those from other faith traditions for this project she's doing. And I promised her that you'd all be really nice and helpful. So please don't make me a liar. So Wilda, over to you if you'd like to say some more about it.
Oh, thank you so much, Kathy. This is so wonderful. I was raised in the Christian tradition, and as I was invited to get people from a whole variety of faith orientation or spiritual orientations, not just formal religions, to speak. I thought, gosh, everybody I know is kind of steeped in the same tea I'm steeped in. And so when the opportunity to talk to you people came, it felt very sacred. So I'm grateful. Thank you, Kathy. The soul guiding, just in a sentence, and the formal sentence is that's a 2-year experiential learning program in the growth of spirit, the love of soul, and the art of spiritual direction. And I'm taking it more for the first phrase, the one about spiritual growth, because I'm in my elder years, and as much as possible, I want to spend my elder years in harmony with spirit and bring whatever that means into the way I live my life. So my understanding of spiritual direction, which is part of the program, even though that isn't the part that I really wanted to focus on. But anyway, I want to call it spiritual accompaniment. And I come alongside and listen deeply and help the person find their own truth and their sense of personal wholeness. And the current project is called Many Paths. It's meant to help us internalize, I'm looking at my notes here just to try to keep it crisp, to internalize the absolute validity of the various ways people access the holy, or whatever term you want to use for that thing we find so hard to describe, but you can feel. And we're to interview several people. I'm going to put this in the chat because it's a bit of a mouthful to everyone. Okay, got to send here. I already typed it in. Yeah, people who are willing to talk about practices, ethics, beliefs, and narrative that form a container within which they consciously follow a spiritual way. So the conversations, this is more practical things, that be, half an hour to an hour. Won't be really lengthy, but I hope we can have a conversation, not just an interview that, crisply ticks off the boxes. I can do it by telephone, by Zoom. If you're in the lower mainland, if we could find a park bench that's quiet enough, that would be my ideal. But anyway, whatever way we can talk. And if you're willing to be interviewed, I would really appreciate it if you could put your name and your spiritual orientation in the chat so we can see, hopefully get some variety there. And then I'll get back to you privately and give you my email address or get yours, or figure out some way for us to make the final arrangements. So are there questions?
And I think this is a one-time thing for now,
Oh,
because this is part of your, so this isn't like an ongoing.
Oh, no. This is to help Wilda get out of a jam. So I have the project this is project 8, and there are 9 projects altogether. And so I am, I'm wanting to do a good job of it. And at the same time, I'm thinking, oh man, this will just be so lovely to hear from a variety of people, let it marinate, and then describe what impact that's had on my sense of the validity, as I said, of all different ways of connecting.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I can say that I did this. I was an interviewee for one of Wilda's classmates, Catherine Murray, who's with us sometimes, and it was perfectly painless. So I can vouch for the process. So I hope you can connect with some folks, Wilda, and good luck with your program. I know you're nearing the end now, and it sounds very exciting.
Oh, perfect. We've got somebody coming here already. Buddhism, perfect, lovely. I will. These are direct messages. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm flummoxing a little bit here. I'm needing to.
I can help you get in touch with folks later. If you want to reach out, just let me know their names and I have people's contact info.
Okay, perfect. I was trying to feel an elegant way to do this. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much. Are there any other announcements or anything else folks want to call attention to before we get started? Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Cliff. Yes, Cliff is saying that Thomas Ord, the one I mentioned, is also giving a lecture on Thursday evening at St. Andrew's Wesley United Church in Vancouver. So that should be really good. Oh, and I'm glad you were able to connect with him. He's a really brilliant guy. I can't even say how many books he's written because it's this like massive list.
Yes, and but more recently, a lot of his views have kind of evolved into an open view of God, which is a view that God does not know the future, and also a view of the quality, the kind of love that God has for us and for his creation really prohibits him by virtue of perfect love from intervening in our affairs, which is his answer to the problem of evil that perplexes a lot of believers. God, the title of his most recent books are around the concept of God can't. It isn't that he doesn't or he won't, he can't intervene. So it's an interesting concept, and I'm hoping to interact with him more when I come up to Vancouver for that event.
That sounds amazing. Oh my goodness. Well, please report back later. So we'd love to hear more. That sounds amazing, Cliff. That's great. Anything else? Okay, well here, let's come into silence for a moment. This is a prayer I wrote that's riffing off of a Tibetan Buddhist prayer. Just as the cool rains fill the streams on the North Shore, pour into its rivers and join together in the Salish Sea, so may the power of every moment of our goodness flow forth to awaken and heal all beings, those here now, those gone before, those yet to come. Just as the eagles soar in beautiful patterns overhead, and when the storms come, use the gusts of wind to push themselves even higher into the heavens, so may the storms of our own lives bring us courage and ever closer to the divine. By the power of every moment of our goodness, may we be strengthened, uplifted, and fulfilled. May we remain safe and healthy. May our children know how much they're loved and feel joy and openness to life. May our students feel enriched by their learning. May our parents feel supported and appreciated for their loving care. May our elders remain active and beloved by their families and communities. May our departed be remembered and prayed for. May those without families be sustained by a tender web of friends. May those without friends find comfort and belonging in their communities. May our communities be a refuge for all living beings, the two-legged and the four-legged, the ones that swim and the ones that fly. Going forward, may all dangers be averted. May wisdom be upheld to end suffering, both for ourselves and for that of our enemies. May no obstacles divert us from the divine path of wisdom and compassion. And may we be so sustained that we radiate boundless love towards all beings, in our cities and towns, our forests and oceans, our families and nations, so we and our enemies might prosper in the four blessings of old age, health, happiness, and strength, and find comfort in one another. From Gampopa from the 12th century. Give us energy for our hearts to turn to the spiritual. Give us energy for the spiritual to become a way. Give us energy for this way to dispel confusion. Give us energy for confusion to arise as wisdom. When you're ready, let's offer one another a sign of peace. Peace, everyone. So wonderful being with you this morning.
Peace, everyone.
Peace to all. Peace.
Peace be with you.
Everyone.
Peace, everyone.
Peace.
Peace to everyone.
You-
Aloha.
Peace and love to
everyone.
everyone.
Peace and comfort.
Hello, Apollo.
Peace to you all.
Peace in
Peace
your
to
heart.
everyone.
Beautiful. Thank you. And when you're ready, Bruce and Cheryl will lead us in a song. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, if you'll join me in our joint affirmation, we come together in peace. We sing together in joy and with love. We worship together in one house, a house with names beyond number. Our paths are many, our beliefs are as leaves, and the tree that we cleave to is nourished by the light of compassion, justice, and mutual respect. May our lives, our beliefs, and our actions help to bring about the world of love we all seek. And let it begin here. Beautiful. Now we're going to take some time to pray just in our own homes and in our own ways for something that we need in the world or wish to see in the world. As always, there are so many things that need our prayers. But I think since this is now officially summertime, now that the rain has stopped here in Vancouver and in other places, I think it's a good time to pray for some rest and renewal. We've worked really hard, friends, for a long time. And let's take some time just to relax and enjoy life a bit. So let's pray for the renewal of all beings. Thank you. Thank you. And when you're ready, let's sing. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bruce and Cheryl. So thank you. Now is when I usually say that I pass around the basket. But in lieu of that, since we live on Zoom, hopefully not all the time, I'll put our donation page in the chat. And so many, yes, so many of you already donate so much time and finances and energy to help support this community. So thank you for all that you do. I just love this group so much. I'm so grateful to all of you. And also, if you have a few extra funds this month, if you could donate them to Doctors Without Borders, who are doing such important work around the world, and also the Indian Residential School Survivor Society also could use your prayers and some extra cash. So thank you for remembering them. Are there any other groups that we should highlight at this time that need some support? If you can think of any, feel free to put them in the chat later. So thank you. And when you're ready, let's sing.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So I am preaching this week in celebration of His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama's birthday. We actually reached out to 7 different Tibetan organizations around the Vancouver area to see if we could get a monk or someone else to preach for this, but they are also enjoying rest and renewal right now, and we couldn't find anyone else. So you have me. So hopefully this will be okay. So yes, His Holiness was born on July 6th, 1935, which means he's about to turn 87 this coming Wednesday. This is a big holiday for the Tibetan people in particular, but also for Tibetan Buddhists and then Buddhists around the world who see the Dalai Lama as a great spiritual teacher, and many non-Buddhists see him that way as well. He's become greatly beloved over time. I don't know how many of you know his story, so I'd like to share that today. I can say that I was very fortunate. We're getting ready to have this trip, but my first big overseas trip was when I was 20. I got to travel to Nepal to stay with Tibetan refugees for 4 weeks and then go to Tibet for 3 weeks. This was part of a study. I think it was called Tibetan Summer, and I got a grant. It was an academic thing to do this and to really get to learn more about the history of Tibet, the Tibetan people, study some of the language, and really try to understand what was going on with the Tibet-China conflict that sadly continued since the 1950s. And it was an unbelievable experience. It was the thing that ended up later resulting in me converting to Buddhism, actually. And I just have so much love and admiration for the Tibetan people, and also for His Holiness. So it's such a celebration. I remember my distinct memory, let's see, I was there in 2005. So he had just turned, let's see, how old was he? So yes, he had just turned 70 at the time. And there was we were in Nepal, and there was a big soccer game and a big festival that the Tibetan community was holding for him. And I remember that it was a cultural thing that we were playing cards, and the locals were very weirded out by the fact that our group of students would play cards and not bet money on it. They couldn't understand why we would do that. So we had a fun cultural exchange over that. But it's always a big celebration. And so consequently, there are going to be huge celebrations in Dharamsala, India, where he lives now, in Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha reached enlightenment, and also in Nepal and Tibet as best they can in Tibet now, even under Chinese occupation. So the Dalai Lama himself, his name, his original birth name is Tenzin Gyatso. So he was born on July 6th. He's born to a farming family in rural Tibet on the border of Tibet and China. So if you're looking at a map, all the way far east, very close to China, which meant it took a little while for them to find him because he wasn't near Lhasa, the center of where the government was ruling at the time. And also later on, monks and lamas felt that his being born on the border with China was predicting what would happen in the future with China invading Tibet. So he was discovered to be a tulku, which is the name for an official reincarnate of a great Lama or a great Tibetan leader. He was the tulku of the 13th Dalai Lama, the one who came before him. And he was found when he was 2 years old. So the Dalai Lama is considered the reincarnate of Avalokiteshvara, who was one of the Buddha's disciples. And he's considered the Buddha of compassion. So you have the different disciples who are kind of trying to promote different qualities in the world. And Avalokiteshvara is the Buddha of compassion. So if you've ever seen a statue where there are 1,000 arms going like this, so in every direction, so that the Buddha of compassion can help people in every direction. And also usually the heads are stacked up. There are 11 heads facing all in different directions. And that's so they can see all suffering. So see all suffering and help everyone. And so that's what Avalokiteshvara does. And so the Dalai Lama is considered to be the human embodiment of compassion in that way. And also the leader of Tibet, because the Tibetan people uphold, so in Mahayana Buddhism, wisdom and compassion, of course, are the 2 core values in Buddhism. but compassion is said to be the highest wisdom. So then the incarnate of compassion would be the leader of Tibet. I find very beautiful. So he was found to be in the reincarnate of the previous Dalai Lama, who on his deathbed had turned and faced towards the east. So they knew that he would be coming back again. So the Dalai Lama always returns in every lifetime to help all beings. So he wouldn't, if you have true compassion, as you've heard me speak about before, you wouldn't want to die and go to nirvana while others are still suffering. So he wants to be reborn so he can help others. So when the previous one died, he was facing towards the east. So they knew they had to look in the east. And so they were going around looking increasingly in these smaller and smaller villages till they came to this one village. And there had been other lamas born into this extended family. So they visited there and they found this 2-year-old boy, and he seemed different than the rest of the kids. He was quite mischievous and seemed a bit wise for his years. And the story is that the great Lama from Sera Monastery was there, and he had worked with the previous Dalai Lama, and he had his mala, his prayer beads from that Dalai Lama, and he had him with him. And he sees this inquisitive child, and he's observing him. So he pulls out these prayer beads, and so the boy comes over and is looking at them, and the Lama says, "If you know my name, you can have these beads." And suddenly, in a Lhasa accent, which is very different, of course, than where they are from, the boy says, "You're the Sera Lama, Sera Lama." He says, "Ah, yes, I am. You remember me." And he gives him the beads. So then he brings the rest of the search party who are looking for the reincarnate, and he says, "Here, let's see. I think this might be the child. I think I found him." So they have all these objects from the previous Dalai Lama. So they have his glasses and some of his ceremonial objects and his book and some things that he used all the time. And then they have other ones that are like it. So several pairs of glasses and several books and several ceremonial objects, but they know which ones belong to the Dalai Lama himself. And they said, "Which of these are yours?" And the boy goes and he says, "This is mine, and this is mine, and I remember this, and this is mine." And he picks all the ones from the 13th Dalai Lama. And he says, "These are mine, I have them back." They said, "Okay, this is the kid. This has got to be the one." So they pray over it and they vet him and they decide, okay, we've all agreed. And they take him when he's 5 years old. So they take him and his family to Lhasa, the capital. They move them all there and they enthrone him when he's 5 years old. So I can't imagine, we have a 5-year-old who throws fits over very small things. I can't imagine him getting enthroned at the age of 5, but he wasn't in charge of things when he was 5. That happened a little later. But he's established there, and then he has to study. And it's kind of annoying because he's very mischievous, which he's known to still be mischievous to this day, even though he's in his late 80s. But he gets into trouble and he tries to bring little small animals into the monastery, and he doesn't want to listen, and he gets into trouble, and they find it kind of aggravating. But it reminded them of the previous Dalai Lama. So they're like, all right, I guess we should have expected this. And eventually he's learning all the teachings. And eventually when he's 15, they decide, well, I know it's kind of early, but we're going to have to give him more political duties because the People's Republic of China has started an invasion. They've invaded the land where the Dalai Lama was originally born on the east, and they've breached the borders. And the Dalai Lama by this point is quite intelligent, and he's been reading everything he can and studying documents from the West and kind of figuring out, okay, what's the political landscape around the world? And he insists, listen, I'm old enough now, and if our country is being invaded, by this point, I have to do what I can to protect us. So they give him full political duties. So he's officially put in charge when he's 15, which I also can't imagine. And so for 9 years, he does everything he can to cooperate with China. So he spends about 1.5 years traveling around China at this point. So China's invaded and it has much more control, and it has a military. Tibet doesn't really have a military. Tibet is gigantic and somewhat, well, rather sparsely populated. And also nonviolence is very important in Buddhism. So they're not organized in that kind of way. They're very organized to have monasteries set up. Religious duties and governmental duties are very combined in Tibet, but they don't have a large military. They don't have a lot of training. They don't have a lot of weapons. That really goes against Buddhist principles. Lamas and past leaders have said that even if you're the last Buddhist in the world, you shouldn't fight to defend your religion, because if Buddhism is really true, it will spontaneously arise in the future as well. This isn't something you have to fight to the death over. That goes against Buddhist beliefs. And so they don't really have a military. So the Dalai Lama is trying to figure out how to cooperate with China to still protect the Tibetan people, but also ensure that they still have some level of autonomy. So he travels around China, he learns Mandarin, he starts meeting with the revolutionary leaders at the time, and he discovers the ideals of socialism. And he's actually impressed. And he said, I think this actually is really in alignment with Buddhist teachings, because the idea of getting rid of hierarchy, trying to uphold the working class, trying to ensure that everyone has an equal entitlement to all the food and all the production and everything, and working together in this kind of way, that actually, I think that's a good thing. Our old system in Tibet, where, you have the lamas and you have the monastic leaders, and they have a lot more power than the nomadic tribes and the people who, the everyday people who are growing food and caring for yak. Maybe we could really learn something from this. So he actually is impressed with socialism, and he's meeting with the leaders and said, I think we can actually work together. I don't think we have to be in opposition on this. And a few of them agree with him, but not in a way that can get any political traction. So finally, he ends up meeting with General Mao, the leader of China, and he's trying to appeal to him on this, and they have these big meetings. And Mao listens to him as he gives this plea that we work together. And then Mao, unfortunately, but famously says, I hear you, but religion is poison. It has two great defects. It undermines the race and retards the progress of the country. Both Tibet and Mongolia have been poisoned by it. And the Dalai Lama is just shocked. So Mao refuses to cooperate with him. And he says the only way that progress can be advanced is if we fully take over Tibet, and if we abandon all religion and destroy the monasteries and disband the monks and nuns and completely abolish this way of living. There's nothing good to come from it. So this greatly worries the Dalai Lama. So he returns to Tibet, and he does what he can to protect the people there. And a few years later, he goes to Bodh Gaya, India, where Buddha reached enlightenment. And he's visiting for the Buddha's birthday, and he appeals to the then Prime Minister of India, Nehru, and asks, if I stayed, or if I could get my people to stay, would you grant us political asylum? And at that point, Nehru is very sympathetic to the Tibetan cause, but says, that's not safe for us. We can't get involved in this. We have enough, frankly, we have enough problems of our own managing things here in India right now, let alone going up against China. So we're sympathetic, but we can't do anything. And the Dalai Lama returns defeated. So he does what he can to protect the people for a few more years. And then in 1959, news spreads that China is going to do what it can to kidnap the Dalai Lama and have him executed, because they know that he's the figurehead of Tibet. And so long as the Dalai Lama rules in any capacity or survives in any capacity, then the Tibetans won't just see themselves as part of China. So there's a big uprising in response to this. This is in 1959. And tens of thousands of Tibetans surround the Potala Palace, this great palace in Lhasa, to protect him. And they take up arms for one of the first times against the Chinese army. They're actually able to take up arms. And there's mass warfare, and thousands of people are killed, mostly Tibetans, because they have no real training in the military. Head lamas are killed, Tibetan leaders are executed by firing squad. And eventually artillery shells are actually striking around the Potala itself and its grounds. And so the Dalai Lama's advisors say, we have to get you out of here. And he says, no, I want to stay with my people for as long as I can. And they said, you'll die, and it will be so bad for Tibetan morale. The best thing you can do now is flee and go somewhere else. That's the only way you can defend our way of life. So he seeks advice from the Nechung oracle. And so Tibetan Buddhism is a combination of the indigenous bone tradition of Tibet and also Buddhism, which was brought by Guru Rinpoche from India and Nepal. And in the original bone tradition, different areas had oracles and had these deities that are from that place, and they protect that place. And so Nechung is the oracle from Tibet. And so the oracle himself, the one who gets possessed by Nechung to give these readings to the Dalai Lama, is friends with the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama trusts what the oracle says when he goes into these trances and gives these readings. So the Dalai Lama appeals to him 3 times because he doesn't want to have to leave. And Nechung says, no, you have to leave tonight. And this is how you do it. And he tells him exactly what to do to get out of the Potala that's being attacked and how to flee and then the route to take to get to India. Because of course, to get out of Lhasa to get to India, you have to go through the Himalayas, which is not a super easy path to take. But Nechung says, this is what you have to do. And the Dalai Lama trusts him. And Nechung says, I'll come with you. I'll bring the spirit of Tibet with me. So they flee together with 20 other lamas and government officials. And they travel and all these things, they have all these near misses happen. But over the course of 2.5 weeks, they travel and they make it to the border. And 2 days before they get there, he sends word that they're coming. And Nehru says, okay, we'll protect you. And Nehru ends up letting him set up his own government in exile. So he has the capital of Tibet in India, in Dharamsala, where he's been since then. So that's been since 1959. If you're interested in kind of learning more of the details of the story and what happened, there's a beautiful movie by Martin Scorsese called Kundun, which Kundun means presence in Tibetan, and that's one of the titles for the Dalai Lama. And it recounts the whole story and how he tried to work with China and what happened, and then how he finally flees. And then a year later, the Tibetan people, they were sad to lose him, but they were happy to see that he was embraced by an outside country. And that then they knew that the spirit could live on even if they lost Tibet. But they were asking him for religious advice. So he wrote this famous prayer, the Word of Truth prayer. He wrote the year after, and it's a long prayer, but I'll read part of it, where he says, O Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and disciples of the past, present, and future, having remarkable qualities, immeasurably vast as the ocean, who regard all sentient beings as your only children, please consider the truth of my anguish, please. Humble sentient beings, tormented by sufferings without cease, completely suppressed by seemingly endless and terribly intense negative deeds. May all their fears from unbearable war, famine, and disease be pacified, to freely breathe an ocean of happiness and well-being, and particularly our pious Tibetan people and the land of snows, who through various means are mercilessly destroyed by hordes on the side of darkness. Kindly let the power of your compassion arise to quickly stem the flow of blood and tears. To these cruel ones, objects of compassion, who are maddened by delusion's evils and who destroy themselves and others, may they also achieve the eye of wisdom, knowing what must be done and undone, and abide in the glory of friendship and love. And so knowing the story and knowing that he's gone on his entire life since then, since he fled in his early 20s to promote nonviolence, and simultaneously to promote nonviolence, but also the Tibetan cause, and to support the Tibetan people. I wonder what we can learn from his story and from his teachings. And you probably know in 1989, he received the Nobel Peace Prize for his work. So he's definitely been recognized and is upheld as one of the main peaceful leaders in the world. So I think there are a few things that he teaches. So the first is that we should listen to our opponents and learn from them, not just deny their reasons that they give for why they are the way they are or what they believe they can support from what they do, and not to deny their virtues outright, but instead to take the time to listen and learn from them and try to uphold these virtues and the reasons that they have. So for him, he didn't just say, socialism is completely in opposition to Buddhism, so I don't want to learn about it. He did everything he could to work with them to understand. And even after fleeing Tibet, he's done everything he can to say, these are the things that are good about this political way of life. These are the problems that we had in Tibet, which it's true we should have worked on earlier. But how can we unite what our opponents are saying with what the good from what we have? How can we work together in this way? And that's part of why he got the Nobel Peace Prize. So I think that listening and learning from our opponents is helpful. Also, never speaking ill of our opponents. Instead, doing whatever we can to promote our values ourselves and knowing that our actions will speak for themselves. So he's never ever said, take up arms against China. He's never said anything negative against China itself, but rather said, how can we live in a way where all beings can live together? How can we promote universal responsibility? How can we work together in this way? And by virtue of doing all the good he can in his life, then people come to their own conclusions and decide whom they should support. He also has never lost faith, both when he was still in Lhasa and it was being attacked. He didn't just completely collapse and say, I'll listen to whatever the military leaders say we should do, or I'm just going to abandon this. I know I'm going to die. Or instead, I'm going to abandon my Buddhist ideals and try to take up arms myself. Instead, because of his religious teachings, he kept appealing to the Nechung oracle, believing and knowing that the oracle would do what it could to guide him. And so maintaining that faith. And since then, that's what he's recommended for Tibetans. He said, don't try to just take up arms. Don't try to become like your opponents, thinking that that's what will overthrow them, but instead use your own heritage and your own teachings and your own background to try to support a better way of life for everyone. And finally, and this is very interesting, remember that we can't predict the future, but that doesn't mean that we have a cause for worry. So he's often said that as terrible as the loss of Tibet has been, it meant that Tibetans left and moved all over the world, and ironically spread Tibetan Buddhism much more because of the Chinese invasion than it ever had been when the Tibetans were still in Tibet alone. And he said it's so interesting to see as Buddhism has taken hold in the West and just how this has resonated with so many people, that it's this beautiful change that's happened. And he feels like because of that, Tibet will never die, even if China never leaves and they never get autonomous control again. But because they've been able to spread their teachings and their beliefs and their culture in other places, it lives on in a different way. And so just remembering that just because we lose a particular fight doesn't mean that that's the final story. Things might take hold in a new way that we never could have anticipated. So not to lose hope in that, and to trust that even as things change, they might come to something better. So I feel like those are just a few things we can learn from him. And finally, I'll close with this final prayer that Tibetans will be giving all next week for his long life and praying for his endless rebirth. So the prayer makes sense if you remember that the symbol of the lotus is the lotus grows in the mud where there's all this muck and devastation, but then it grows up into this beautiful, blissful flower. So the prayer is, in the Buddha realm, encircled by snow peaks, you are the source of all benefit and bliss. Tenzin Gyatso, Avalokiteshvara in person. May your lotus feet remain firm for 100 eons. Mane Padme Hum. Thank you. And when you're ready, I think Bruce and Cheryl have one final song for us.
Buddham cha dhammam cha gauttamam cha yavadi bodhim sharanam prayami Ganotamam cha Yavadibodim Sharanam Prayami Danadikrityais Chakritar Mayebir Buddho Bhaveyam Jagato Hitaya.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bruce and Cheryl. Amazing as always. And friends, let us go with hope, with perseverance, remembering to stick to our ideals, but in a way that doesn't just doesn't just make things worse for the aggressor, but how can we work with others, even our opponents, to help bring them into the whole and help learn from one another as best we can. Amen.